So I want to talk about our perception of other people, the way people perceive us, and the filter that sort of taints the way we see the world, because you think you're seeing reality, you think your perception of other people is accurate, and it isn't necessarily accurate. So I want to dive into that and give you some understanding so that you can help understand yourself better, and you can understand the way you interact in this world in a little more clear way with some actionable steps that you can take. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm the creator of the Confident Connection Method. So I combined hypnotherapy, mind coaching, and relationship coaching so that I can help my clients go back on a subconscious level, reframe their subconscious programming, and then step into the implementation process of actually creating this lasting change in their life. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out the link in the description below. You can set up a completely complimentary consultation call so that you and I can chat, and I can help you get some clarity, and I can make my very best recommendations for you. Now, our perceptions are formed by the beliefs that we have in our subconscious mind. Now, those beliefs were created at a time when we didn't have any discernment. The reality is human beings are actually in hypnosis from birth to age 7. We're in the theta brainwave state. So during that time, we're assigning meaning to everything we experience and all the things we don't experience. So when we have needs that don't get met, the pain of that experience is something we're assigning meaning to. But I don't know about you, I don't know any toddlers with much discernment, or even 6-year-olds. They aren't realizing that the other person or their caregiver didn't mean to ignore their need, or was too busy with their own things, or whatever. Even if that parent, let's say, was mean and cruel, they weren't realizing that it wasn't their fault that they were mean and cruel. They are thinking that it must be their fault. They must have done something wrong. And so it's creating belief systems that aren't accurate. Now, the problem with that is what happens is the subconscious mind gets locked down around the age of 7 with this comparing mechanism, and it keeps new information from coming in easily. So new information does come in from our life experiences, but more profoundly from big traumas and complex traumas, which actually just kind of create more negative viewpoints in our mind. And we don't have access to it, but the subconscious mind is driving over 95% of everything you think, feel, and do. So it's in control of your life, but you don't have a lot of access to it. So think about the fact that people see you in a myriad of ways, right? One person might think you're rude because of their limited interaction with you. One person might think you're the kindest, most loving person on the planet because of their interaction with you. One person might think you're brilliant because of their interaction with you. And another person might think you're dumb for taking a life path that they would never take. And so everyone's view of you is different based on their own life experience, based on their perceptions of the world, their assumptions about you. And those perceptions and assumptions are created over time, and we create sort of a belief system that throws people into a certain category. Oh, all people who say and do this are like that, or all women are like this, or all men are like that. They kind of have these sweeping ideals, but even when they don't have a huge sweeping ideal or generalization, they still are seeing you through the lens of their life experience. Now, their life experience is tainting their view. It's like a colored lens that affects the way they perceive information. It doesn't make it accurate. But I want you to flip that around for a moment, because that means your perception of them is also not accurate. Now, think of someone who maybe you think is really rude or awful, and then think about the way they might be with their dog. With their dog, they might be really sweet and cuddly and connected and feel safe and like they won't be judged, so they're really loving toward their dog. The perception of the way the dog sees them is not the perception of you seeing them be reactive or rude in other areas. And so the way we see the world is very much tainted by our own experiences and our own beliefs about that. And because of that, that keeps us on a trajectory of seeing more of what we're looking for. And so we make assumptions about people. And so the thing that you really want to do is you want to slow everything down, and you want to be able to make clear, more rational judgments about other people without it being a snap decision, right? So if you're in the relationship dynamic, you want to slow down that dynamic and not project your assumptions of what someone is like onto them. Sometimes it happens in a split second. I remember looking back on a relationship and noticing that the moment I was sort of attracted to someone was when they kind of stood with their hands in their pocket and they kind of looked a little insecure. They looked a little unsure. And it triggered this feeling of like, oh, this is a good person. They're humble. They're not arrogant and showy, and they can probably be trusted. But none of those things came in actual words in the moment. They came in a feeling and a belief system inside of me. And so we want to slow down that process and not make these assumptions. They might not be accurate, but they might be. But we want to slow down the process so that we can take our time to really question not only how someone else is behaving in their behavior pattern. We also want to question, what are we projecting? What are we assuming? What's our story? What's our narrative about people that do X, Y, and Z? That means they are what? Right? This is probably going to come from the way your father was, your mother was, your uncles were, your upbringing, your friends, your exes. And we can actually put things on people that keep them from bringing out the best parts of themselves because our assumptions of them keep them in a very narrow narrative. And so slowing down that process and being intentional about collecting the data and the information that you really need to make informed decisions, and then challenging those thoughts that you have before you make the decision to say, well, why do I think this way? What is in me that says no one's ever there for me? Or I can't trust this person? Or if I do this, then they're going to leave me. There's a lot of narratives in there, and they're all really old. So you slow it down and you question, where did that come from? Can I know with 100% certainty that story is true? And no, of course, you can't know that. And so we want to be challenging ourselves, and that is the epitome of growth. People who are challenging the way they think and the way they feel, they are the ones that grow. They are the ones that are open to seeing things in a new way. They're open to seeing the world in a new way, and they're open to relating in a new way and not so stuck. It's the people who don't challenge their beliefs, and they believe that they're 100% right. They've got it all figured out. And a lot of times you'll notice this when people talk about politics a lot. It kind of can sound like someone is just reiterating a headline. They're just regurgitating this headline that they keep hearing over and over. And instead of being critical about their thinking and taking their time to do their own research, they've let that headline that's come into their awareness over and over become truth without questioning it. And so we want to question, not because we're going to assume that everything we hear is wrong, but we want to question in a curious way if our perception of someone else could be off, and also what's the story inside of ourselves that's creating that perception. So that's what I would challenge you to do. If you actually want to have a growth mindset, if you actually want to see people in the best version of who they are without ignoring the reality of things that could be red flags that you shouldn't just be blind to, you've got to start questioning your perception of them and your perception of the stories you have inside of yourself and the narrative that you're giving, so that you're not projecting out what someone is before you actually have evidence to match that. So even my internal assumption when I saw someone standing there with hands in his pockets and kind of looking, a certain way, like I should have challenged that assumption that, oh, this is a good guy. Not because he wasn't good, he was, but I want to be patient with the assumption that that doesn't mean that person's good in every way, or that doesn't mean that person's necessarily good for me. That doesn't mean that fits my projected ideal. I really want to slow that down and question those things. And so doing that politically, relationship-wise, with your friends, with your family, stop expecting them to fit a certain narrative that you've created in your mind, and just zoom back and see them for who they are, what they're doing, how they're trying to self-protect for themselves, and get really honest about whether or not you're projecting a story or a need onto that person. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. And of course, if you'd like to really do a deep dive, get some clarity for yourself and do that deep subconscious work so you can break through this narrative that's running on the background of your mind and actually have some peace of mind in your own life, then you'll want to set up that consultation call so that we can talk. And perhaps this deep subconscious work is exactly what you need to break through and create that momentum. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.